Good morning, children. Sairam. Today, again, I welcome you for the next chapter of Snapshot, which is Birth, chapter number 7. And after this, your course of Snapshot is going to get over as the two chapters have been removed by CBSE. One is The Ghat of the Only World, and the other is The Tale of the Melon City. So, according to that, this one is your last chapter of Snapshot. So, let's start with the chapter Birth. About the author, H. Cronin. Archibald Joseph Cronin was a Scottish novelist, dramatist, and non-fiction writer. He was born on July 1896 in Dunbartonshire, Scotland in 1896. In 1914, he entered Glasgow University to study medicine, but his studies were interrupted by World War I, in which he served in the British Navy as a surgeon sub-lieutenant. He received his MB and CHP in 1990 and took a job as a ship surgeon on a passenger liner. He afterwards took positions at several hospitals, and in 1921 he married Agnes Mary and moved to South Wales to start a medical practice. He received his MD degree in 1925 from the University of Glasgow. MD means master degree. And he moved to London to start a practice there. So the chapter is an extract from A.J. Cronin's novel The Citadel. This extract describes how a young doctor revives a child that is born lifeless. So basically this chapter is about the hard work of the doctor, where how much effort he had put on to bring the life of that child back and how he did so. The rest we are going to study. Now let's see the few important things. Joe Morgan and his wife are a middle-aged couple. They have been married for 20 years but have not get any child so far. Now Mrs. Morgan is expecting her first child. Both her husband and her mother are feeling very nervous because the delivery of the child is going to be before time. A young doctor named Andrew is called in. The doctor has to put in hard labor in the delivery of the child. When the child is born, it seems to be stillborn. The shock could be too much for Morgans to bear. While the doctor is attending to the mother, the nurse places the baby under the bed among dirty newspapers. After assuring himself that the mother is safe, the doctor looks for the baby. Finding it under the bed, he at once pulls it out. It was a boy, perfectly formed. The boy was warm but was not breathing. At once the doctor sets to revive the child's breath. After half an hour's terrible effort, he is at last successful. He thanks God and hands the child to the nurse. So, this story tells us about a family where there was a man who was Joe Morgan and his wife Mrs. Morgan. They were happily married, but they were not having any child. So now after 20 years of their marriage, for the first time the lady was expecting her first baby. So obviously when she was expecting her first baby after a long time, so they all were extremely nervous about the child, and they did not want to take any kind of risk regarding the child. But what the problem was that now the child was about to born, but that was before the time. You must be knowing that at least it needs 9 months, okay, for a child to form properly. But some of the deliveries are there, some of the cases are there where the childs are delivered like 1 month prior, maybe in 7 months or 8 months. But those deliveries are very, very complicated, and it is very hard for the mother and the child to survive that. It's not that easy process. Yes, if any delivery is taking place after 9 months, then it's okay, then it is normal. Moreover, this is one thing. The other thing was that the man Joe Morgan was extremely worried about his wife also, and he was so nervous There was a kind of happiness inside him, excitement that he was about to be a father, but at the same time he was very much worried about his wife also, as his wife was going through the pain, and delivering a child is a very big process where a lady has to go through a lot of pain, which is not that easy to bear. So now see the characters. Dr. Andrew Manson, newly qualified, takes a job as assistant to Dr. Page in a small mining town. On arrival, he finds to his surprise that Page is partly paralyzed and will never work again. This means Dr. Andrew Manson will have to do most of the clinic's work in the mining town at a mere pay. The midwife, an experienced nurse to help in the birth of the child. The midwife and Andrew are contrasting personalities. The midwife is a foil to Andrew. She feels hopeless, resigned, helpless, fearful, and untrained. On the other hand, Andrew proves to be more optimistic, diligent, efficient, self sufficient, spontaneous, and well trained. Joe Morgan, a well built person in 40s, lives in a small Welsh town of Blaney, works as a driller at the mines. He has been married for 20 years but have not got any child so far. Mrs. Morgan, wife of Joe Morgan, is expecting her first child. Both her husband and her mother are feeling very nervous because the delivery of the child is going to be before the time. Christine, a school teacher, Andrew falls in love and contemplates marrying her. Morgan's mother, a tall gray haired woman of nearly 17. So basically, the characters in this story are, one is Mr. Morgan, other is Mrs. Morgan, those who were the would be parents, those who were about to be the parents. And the wife of the mother of Mrs. Morgan is the other character. There are three now. Fourth one is the midwife, the nurse. Fifth one is Andrew, the doctor. And there was a girl, Christine, with whom Andrew fell in love. So these are the main characters of the story. And let's see the summary. Andrew Manson was a young doctor. He had newly passed out of a medical school and joined as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page. The clinic was in the small Welsh town of Plainly. It was a mining town. Joe Morgan was a resident of this town. He was a well-built person and worked as a driller at the mines. He lived with his wife. They have been married for 20 years, but so far they didn't have any child. Now Mrs. Morgan was expecting her first child. After spending a disappointing evening with his lady love Christine, Andrew came back home. He found Morgan waiting for him breathlessly. He told the doctor that he had been waiting for him for an hour. He said that his wife needed his presence because the child was expected to be born before time. So now the story starts where Andrew was not at the clinic. He wasn't there. Sorry, he was not at his home. So Andrew was not at his home. Actually, he went on a date with his girlfriend, who was Christine. And while returning back, the mood of the doctor was not good because he had a kind of fight with Christine. So that is why he was a bit upset about it. And when he returned back to his home, he saw that Mr. Morgan was waiting for him. And after asking, Mr. Morgan told him that I have been waiting here for 1 hour. It's been like 1 hour I'm waiting for you because now my wife really needs a doctor as she is not feeling well. She is expecting, we all are expecting the birth of the child before time. So we need your help. So please come with us. Okay. So at that point of time, doctor was not at all okay with that. Why? Because he was upset about his fight with his girlfriend. But still, he went with Mr. Morgan. Together they set out for Morgan's house. Andrew was feeling very dull and tired. He had no idea that this night call would prove unusual and influence his whole future in Blaney. When they reached the door of number 12, Morgan stopped outside the door. He said that he won't go inside. sorry, he won't go in. Inside, a narrow stair led up to a small bedroom. It was clean but poorly furnished. It was lit only by an oil lamp. Mrs. Morgan's mother was sitting beside the patient. She was a tall, grey-haired woman of nearly 70. An elderly midwife was also there. Both of them watched Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. So the moment they reached the house, Mr. Morgan, he just stayed outside only because he was not at all willing and comfortable to come inside, as he was not in the condition to see his wife in the pain of the complete delivery, um, in that in that complete process of delivery, the person, Mr. Morgan, was not feeling comfortable, and he thought that he would not be able to see his wife in that much of pain. That's why he decided that he is going to stay outside the house. So that's why he didn't enter. But the doctor entered, and the moment he entered, he saw that there was an old lady of 70 who was the mother of Mrs. Morgan, and there was also a midwife, which was nurse. Since there was a period of waiting, Andrew waited in the kitchen. Soon he was lost in his thoughts about Christine. An hour later, he went upstairs again. He noted the progress made and came down once more. He sat down by the kitchen fire. So delivery process is not that you just go and the child is born. It takes a bit of time because the lady has to go through the labor pains, and those pains are like in portions. It's not like at one time. So that is why he was going, checking, and then he was returning back. So now, when he was doing this process, when he was indulged in the process of the delivery, still the doctor was not that comfortable with his thoughts because he was only thinking about his fight with his girlfriend, and he was lost in his own thoughts that today was not the good day for him because he was lost in the memories of Christine. At last the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew looked at the clock. It now showed 3:30. He rose and went up to the bedroom. He saw that he could now begin his work. An hour passed. It was a long, hard struggle. Then, as the first rays of dawn appeared, the child was born lifeless. So then, finally, when the nurse called the doctor, now the doctor was ready to start with his work, and the complete process took one time, and with the first ray of the dawn, what happened? The child was born, but the child was lifeless. There was no life in the child. As Andrew looked at the lifeless form, a shiver of horror went through his body. He couldn't decide whether to resuscitate resuscitate the child first or attend to the mother who herself was in a serious state. Instinctively, he gave the child to the nurse and turned his attention to Susan Morgan, who now lay collapsed, almost pulseless. He gave her an injection, and after a few minutes of feverish effort, Susan's heart gained strength. So at that point of time, both were in trouble, the child as well as the mother. So what was the consideration of the doctor? The doctor was not able to decide whether he should go for the mother or he should go for the child, because the child was lifeless and the mother was also struggling for her pulse. So finally he decided that he should go with the mother. So he handed over the child to the nurse, and then he dealt with the lady whose name was Suzanne Morgan, who was Mr. Morgan's wife. So finally, when he just checked and everything got fine, finally Suzanne heart gained strength. So it started working. So now the doctor could concentrate on the child. Now he could safely leave her. Swinging round to the nurse, he asked, "Where's the child?" When Andrew looked at the child, he at once knew that it was a case of asphyxia, which is that the lack of oxygen in your body and the excess of CO2. Okay, so he got to know that this is a problem. Instantly, he was on his feet. "Get me hot water and cold water," he said to the nurse. "And basins too. Quick, quick." It took a blanket. He took a blanket and laid the child upon it. Then he began the special method of respiration. The basins arrived. Andrew put cold water into one basin. Into the other, he mixed water as hot as his hand could bear. Then, like a crazy juggler, he hurried the child between the two basins. Now he plunged it into the icy water, now into the hot one. 15 minutes passed. Sweat was now running into Andrew's eyes. His breath was coming pantingly, but no breath came from the body of the child. Now, finally, when the doctor saw that there is a lack of oxygen in the body of the child and the excess of CO2 is there, so he called out for he wanted two kind of bowls, big one. In one there was cold water, in one there was hot water. So what the doctor was doing, once he was placing the child in the cold one, and next he was placing, means he was just putting that child into the hot one. So cold, hot, like this he was doing. And finally, the process was so tiring that the sweat started coming out of the doctor's body, but there was no sign of the breath from the body of the child. The doctor, first thing, that the doctor was very much disturbed with the thoughts of his own life, that was the fight with his girlfriend. Second thing, the doctor was knowing that this couple is expecting the baby after 20 years of marriage, so there was a kind of pressure, mental pressure on him, where at any cost he had to save the life of the child. Third thing, he was a doctor, so he could not give up at any point of time. So that's why he was struggling so hard, and that is why his body started sweating, but no breath could come out from the body of the child. A terrible sense of defeat came on him. Having labored in vain for half an hour, he still made on one last effort. He rubbed the child with a rough towel. He pressed and released the little chest with both his hands. Thus he tried to get breath into that limp body. And then a miracle happened. The little chest gave a short heave. Andrew continued with his efforts feverishly. The child had started gasping deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus came from one tiny nostril. The limbs were no longer boneless. The head no longer lay back spinelessly. The skin was slowly turning pink, and then exquisitely came the child's cry. Andrew handed the child to the nurse. He went downstairs and took a long drink of water. He took his hat and coat and left the house. Outside he found Joe standing on the pavement with a tense, expectant face. "All right, Joe," said Andrew, "both all right." So finally, when he made his last effort with the child, finally the child got his breath back, and it gave happiness to everybody, those who were there. Everybody became happy, and the child started crying. So when a child is born, it's very important that the child should cry, because it only decides that whether the child is okay or not, the child is having life or not. So that's why you must have seen that when the child is born, the doctor, they start beating the child at the back, because it's very important for the child to cry. So finally the child cried. When the child cried, the doctor gave the child to the nurse and had water, because he was sweating and he was a kind of nervous. And then he took his hat and coat and he left the house. And when he was coming out of the house, he saw Joe was standing outside. So he told Joe that everything is okay, don't worry, both are all right. The mother and the child both. It was quite light, nearly 5 o'clock. A few miners were already in the street. As Andrew walked with them, he kept thinking unconsciously, "I've done something, oh God, I have done something real at last." So finally, when the doctor was leaving the house, when he was on the street moving with the other miners, those who have finished their work and they were going back maybe. So finally, when he was walking, he realized that today was not that good day. Today was a bad day for me, but still I'm very happy that I did something so good today, where I gave a kind of happiness, okay, to the family, those who were expecting their first child after 20 years of their marriage. So this thing gave him a kind of positivity and happiness, that okay, whatever have happened from the morning or yesterday, it's okay, that was too bad, but at least by the end of the day everything is nice, and I'm living with a very good note that the child is okay, the mother is okay, and I've completed my duty properly. And just because of me, maybe because of my efforts, this family is happy now. So there was a kind of satisfaction in the heart of the doctor, which made him happy, which made him also very much happy. So this is the chapter. The reading, just one para I'm taking, children. Though it was nearly midnight when Andrew reached Brentgower, he found Joe Morgan waiting for him, walking up and down with short steps between the closed surgery and the entrance to the house. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. So this is the reading. I've told you every time that you have to go through the reading thoroughly, because until and unless you will read the chapter, nothing will be clear to you. As much as explanations I can give here, but it will be of no use until and unless you will go through the chapter. So please go through the chapter thoroughly. If you have any problem, please ask me, and please complete your written work as soon as possible. I hope you all are doing that, and just continue with the same work. Every time I'm telling you the same thing. Now, children, your snapshot is over. We are going to concentrate on the Hornbill Plus. I'm going to, in the coming weeks, I'm going to take your writing section also. I'm going to explain you various things which are related to your writing section. So, by the time, thank you and Sairam.